Do you like mysteries? To wander through the enigmatic mist of the inexplicable? Great. I'm Merc, and here you'll find what you're looking for. Welcome to my domains. The truth dissolves into the mist.
The snow in the Isdalen Valley does not forgive. It covers everything in a thick white silence, a blanket that preserves as much as it obscures. On the morning of November 29th, 1970, that silence was broken by a father and his young daughter out for a walk on the outskirts of Bergen, Norway. They were not looking for mystery, but mystery found them. Behind a large, flat stone, partially shielded from the relentless wind, lay a scene that did not belong to that peaceful landscape. It was the remains of a human being, or what was left of one. The body was so badly burned that it was almost unrecognizable as a person. The flames had consumed nearly everything, leaving behind a black, contorted effigy against the grey rock. But this was no ordinary accident, no simple tragedy of a hiker caught in the elements. This was a scene meticulously designed to be a dead end. The first investigators on the scene felt it immediately, a wrongness that went beyond the shock of a corpse. The fire had been too hot, too thorough, as if someone had used an accelerant to ensure that nothing remained. Yet they were wrong. Things did remain. Scattered around the body, half melted and blackened by the heat, were the first clues in a puzzle that would haunt Norway for over half a century. A pair of sunglasses, their plastic frames warped into a surreal shape, a burnt wool sweater, a pair of rubber boots, size 38, and a small metal container, its contents fused into a single, solid mass by the intense heat. This was not a person who had simply wandered into the valley to die. This was a woman who had been erased. But who was she, and who was so desperate to make sure no one would ever find out? When police moved the body, they discovered that the ground beneath her was almost untouched by fire. The flames had been so concentrated that they had burned upwards and inwards, not outwards. This was a deliberate act of destruction, a pyre built specifically for one person. And on that person, forensic examiners would soon find things that made no sense at all. Her hands were clenched tight, not in the agony of death by fire, but because she had died before the flames ever touched her. The autopsy would reveal a lethal cocktail of sleeping pills in her system, enough to kill several people. The fire was just the final chapter, an attempt to burn away her identity forever. But her body refused to cooperate. Inside her stomach, pathologists found something chilling, traces of phenobarbital, a powerful sedative. But they also found something that suggested a last, desperate act. Despite the pills, her lungs contained soot. She had been alive, barely, when the fire was set. She had inhaled the smoke. The question that has haunted investigators for decades is this: was that her choice, or was it someone else's? The scene was a paradox, a suicide by pills, but also a brutal, ritualistic cremation. A woman who wanted to die, but someone who wanted her to disappear completely. The investigation that followed would peel back layer after layer of deception, revealing a life lived in the shadows, a ghost who walked among the living for years before finally vanishing into the Norwegian snow. As the police in Bergen began their work, they had almost nothing: a body, some burnt belongings, and a mystery. But then a hotel clerk in the city center came forward. He remembered a woman. She had stayed at the Hordahimen Hotel for a few days before the body was found. She was well-dressed with dark hair and a European accent, and she had paid in advance with crisp, foreign banknotes. She had registered under a name Finella Lork. When police searched the room she had vacated, they found more questions than answers. The room had been scrubbed clean. But in the trash, hidden beneath other items, they found a clue that would become the central symbol of the case. 2 glass bottles. One contained the remnants of a fine, expensive liquor. The other contained a dark, murky liquid that smelled of burned plastic and almonds. It was the same accelerant used in the Valley. This woman, Fenella Lork, had checked out on the morning of November 23rd, the very day the medical examiner believed the woman in Isdalen had died. But the trail did not end there. As detectives began to trace her movements, they realized that Fenella Lork was not one woman, but many. Witnesses came forward from hotels all over Bergen and beyond. They described a woman of striking, chameleon-like appearance. Sometimes she had long, dark hair. Sometimes it was short and blonde. She wore elegant dresses, then practical hiking clothes, then severe conservative suits. She spoke with different accents, a hint of German, a touch of Belgian French, a careful, formal English, and she used different names. Fenella Lork, Claudia Telt, Vera Jarell. There were at least 10 identities, each with its own passport, its own set of clothes, its own personality. She was a ghost, a spy from a Cold War thriller, except she was terrifyingly real. Police found her luggage, stored at the Bergen railway station. Inside they discovered the tools of her trade, wigs of different colors and styles, makeup kits, glasses with plain lenses for disguise, and they found money, stacks of it, carefully organized. French francs, Swiss francs, German Deutschmarks, Italian lira, Belgian francs. She was a citizen of nowhere, a woman who belonged to all of Europe and to none of it. Jewelry she wore was equally strange. Rings and a brooch, all of which had their identifying marks, their hallmarks, deliberately filed away. Someone had gone to great lengths to ensure that even these small items could not be traced back to a country of origin, a city, a jeweler, a life. Every possession was a cipher, a locked door with no key. But perhaps the most disturbing find was the notebook. It was a small, leather-bound diary written in a code that no one could break. A series of letters and numbers, carefully inscribed. Tra 8/23, Ham 7/9. Killed Wapulu Nampersapulu cipher experts worked on it for months. They tried everything, from simple substitution ciphers to complex military codes. Nothing worked. It was as if she had designed a language for one, a private system of communication that she took with her to the grave. The police were not just investigating a death. They were investigating a life lived in complete and utter secrecy. They traced her movements across Europe. She had been seen in Paris, in London, in Hamburg, in Copenhagen. She would check into hotels for a few days, pay in cash, and then vanish. She had no friends, no family, no known associates. She was a lone operator, a woman whose only companions were her wigs and her coded diaries. In the final days of her life, something changed. Witnesses in Bergen reported seeing her with a man. He was never clearly described, just a shadowy figure seen in the hotel lobby, walking with her near the harbor. Was this the person who shared her final meal? The person who might have watched her swallow those pills, or perhaps helped her do so? The person who then doused her in accelerant and lit the match? The autopsy offered one final, heartbreaking detail. Her teeth, they were a marvel of dental work, with expensive gold-filled crowns and intricate bridge work. It was the one clue that could not be burned. Police sent her dental records to every country in Europe. They contacted Interpol, embassies, and missing persons bureaus. They sent the description to every dentist from the Soviet Union to the United States. And they waited, for months, for years, for decades. No one ever came forward. No dentist recognized their work. No family member claimed her. No government acknowledged her. The woman in the Isdalen Valley, the woman with the coded diary and the 10 identities, the woman who was burned to ash on a cold November night, remained a ghost. In 2016, Norwegian police reopened the case. They exhumed her body, hoping that modern DNA technology could finally provide an answer. They took samples, ran them through international databases, and waited again. The results were inconclusive. They could trace her ancestry broadly to Central Europe, but nothing more specific. The technology that had solved countless cold cases met its match in the Isdal Woman. To this day, her gravestone in Bergen's Malendal Cemetery lies flat against the earth. It is a deliberate choice, a measure taken years ago to prevent the grave from becoming a tourist attraction. On it, there is no name, no date of birth, no epitaph. It simply reads the unknown woman. She walked through Europe in the height of the Cold War, a woman of 100 faces and not a single one her own. She checked into hotels with fake passports and paid with cash from a dozen countries. She met with men in the shadows and wrote her secrets in a code no one could crack. And then she walked into a frozen valley in Norway, swallowed a handful of pills, and let the flames consume her life. Wait, the question that lingers, the one that will never be answered, is not just who she was. It is what she was running from, and whether, in those final moments, as the smoke filled her lungs and the fire began to burn, she finally felt safe.
Did you like this mystery? And what is your theory? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed it, then like and share. I'm Merc, and I'll be waiting for you in the next mystery.